Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com. Hello and welcome to SciTech Culture. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How are we today, Steve? You ready to have your personality tested?
I certainly am, and I hope it's not like the weather outside, cold and wet.
Well, according to this test that I found on 16personalities.com, which is based on the infamous Myers-Briggs test, maybe we can find out what makes us tick. And for a fee, at least according to the website, they can go into in-depth discussion of what your personality type is. So we're talking about personality types today, and I thought it would be interesting to cover this, something a bit different for us. I don't think we've touched on this in a long time, if at all. What I find, just as a starting point, is interesting that you've got something like this, which is, I guess, attempting to be a tool to assist you in perhaps identifying why maybe you have the personality and behavioral traits that you do. And I did the test. Turns out what was I? I was an advocate personality type, which apparently is very rare and makes up less than 1% of the population. So I'm officially a freak, ladies and gentlemen.
What combination is that? Is that an IN?
So it's an INFJ-A.
Okay, there you go.
So I actually have done this test one or two times before, and I've roughly landed in this spot each time. What's interesting, though, is that, I did read it, and there was a lot of it that I thought, yeah, I can see some of that. Then there are other bits where you're like, yeah, maybe not. But then that comes down to, you're not going to be pigeonholed into one of 16 types of people. So I think that they try and do it where there's like a bit of a sliding scale, a percentage scale on the side when they give you a rating at the end of the quiz, which kind of, gives you the variation within that personality type as well. Yeah. So it's not just, bang, you're this type, but still, I'm sort of not sure whether this was helpful or not. It's not as if, well, maybe I'm pretty aware of what makes me tick, I think, but I don't know. Is it helpful, do you think, to answer a bunch of questions and then you find out what you really like?
I guess it depends who you are. So if you're a marketer, it probably helps to know the personality types that are going to respond to your marketing campaign. If you're a manager, they do a lot of this through HR, and that's probably where you've done some of these tests. I've certainly done the test 3 or 4 times through work, and just by the way, got a reasonably different result every time. Yeah. So, I've either come through both as an introvert or as an extrovert, and just depends, I guess, on the day and the time and how I choose to answer the questions. The whole reason, I think, behind personality testing is that it's always when people want to understand how people are going to behave in certain situations. And obviously advertising and marketing and human resources or personnel and culture are probably the two main reasons. Certainly in a workplace, I think the line these days is that you understand your own personal traits relative to your colleagues, and maybe that will help you communicate and work more effectively with them. And so I guess if you're asking what's the use, well, I guess even as some people claim, these are really just horoscopes for personalities, and you can look that up as well. There are plenty of people who don't put any faith in these personality tests at all. At least it gives you a starting point to talk with and understand more about yourself, because certainly some of the traits are going to be picked up in the test and they are going to be reflective of you. Something
I did want to touch on, which I think you alluded to there, having done the test a few times and you get different results, it occurred to me that it might be more of a point in time thing as well. So if, for instance, there were a couple of questions around how you approach a group setting. So if you walk in cold and there's a group of people there, how do you handle that? Or are you comfortable in like a party type setting with lots of people and noise around, or do you prefer quiet? I know. For instance, like when I was 20, I found those scenarios quite anxiety creating situations, and I'd avoid them. So I would have answered the question more along the lines of, no, I prefer quiet and I don't like those. I'm not saying that I'm, become a complete 100% extrovert now, but now, 20 years later, I'm a lot more relaxed around that type of scenario, and I probably wouldn't have much issue with it. And so I would have answered the question differently. So in that respect, if you then multiply it out over the 40-odd questions that they ask you, that you could get that variation based on a point in time as well, I would have thought.
Well, they say that about the test as well, and they do say that it will vary over time. So if you do it, 10 years apart, you can expect at least some of it to change. And like you, even though I think I've got 3 different or 4 different types, there have been a number of characteristics that stay the same for me, and that's always the I and the T. The N and the T. Yeah. So it could be an E or an I. It could be definitely an N and a T, and then it's either an F or a J, depending on the weather.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
But it's interesting, and of course the value of these tests are for people to predict your behaviour, which I think leads, us to an interesting sort of point now where we've got AI creating personalities. I mean, it's nothing new. We've had them for a number of years now in sales and marketing, where they imagine who would buy their product and they create a persona based around that person. And it's very much the same thing, but I think AI now could take this in a different direction.
Well, if you think about it, and it sounds almost glib to talk about it this way, but the personality traits, behaviours, mannerisms, everything about your personality could potentially be quantified in a big data kind of sense. Like, so a machine. Yep, that's right. So a machine could read all of your information. It could interpret your mannerisms, and it could, because a machine can actually deal with vast quantities of information and processing and data and do a lot of analyzing on it. Like you said, it could probably create a much more accurate predictor of your personality type. So it doesn't become about, oh, you're one of 16 personalities. It'll be, this thing will read you, and then it'll be able to just accurately tell how you'll behave in any given situation, which is a little disturbing to me, but I'm sure that it's on the way.
Well, this is what disturbs me about the Facebook hack, is that once they know how, and for 80 million users, they've got all the data they need to know how those people that were hacked will behave in any given situation. And those people can be individually manipulated, theoretically, maybe now, but surely with the computing power in 5 years' time, it'll be possible, and those people will be able to be manipulated for whatever reason, hopefully just marketing, so they end up with a new pair of sneakers and a nice accessory.
Absolutely. You'd hope that
not for political outcome.
No,
but
that's
that
right.
could happen.
You'd hope that there'd be a lot of positive uses for such an analysis, I guess. But you could go down a very negative rabbit hole as well. I remember seeing a thing going around on Facebook about a Joe Rogan simulated AR clip where basically an AR replicated Joe Rogan and said everything, like basically spoke in his voice to the point where if you watched it, you thought it was actually him that was talking.
Wow.
Now, I assume it did that because he does a 3-hour weekly podcast, so there's probably plenty of video that it could have sampled to determine how all of his inflections, the way he talks, his opinions, etc., and then it was just able to spit out something that it could do, for some nefarious purpose, for instance. So if somebody wanted him to speak in a certain way, they could just create a fake video of it. And I think there was an Obama one as well that was quite freaky as well. It kind of looks very realistic. So you could go down that rabbit hole and see all manner of dystopian futures emanating from that. But there could, I guess, hopefully be a more positive outcome to something like this as well.
There are lots of positive outcomes, and it can be anything from, say, like how the weather affects the use of public transport, or what people might do given any particular condition in terms of moving around, in terms of their responses, and these can all be very positive. In fact, I think ultimately, AI analysing people's behaviours will probably lead to a whole range of greater efficiencies and less problems for us in our day-to-day lives. But, the trade-off is that people know how you respond. So, I guess the only thing that humans are going to have to learn to do, and I'm sure will evolve to do in the future, will be to randomise their behaviours.
Throw that proverbial spanner in the works, as they say.
That's right, because that's what happens now. For instance, they think on a particular day that something will happen because of the weather, but there's another big event on and everyone goes somewhere else or something like that. All these empty trains run at one end and they're all overcrowded at the other. And but AI theoretically would predict that because it knows what people will do most likely.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess just to finish up, in terms of, using it as a psychological tool to help people, does it matter to do these tests, or do people need it? Do they not need it? Or does it even have a function? I mean, it would seem to me that if you were unsure of yourself, maybe it might explain some stuff. But again, like, it could potentially just be a horoscope, like you were saying.
Well, I think probably going to the horoscope end of things is probably a little bit unfair to the tests. I mean, if you're going to live your life by them, then they probably are no better than a horoscope. Because, as you said, there's a sliding scale within each personality type that would sort of makes you a bit more of another one as well, et cetera, et cetera. But I guess the thing that I've found useful from a workplace thing is that it gives you a common ground to talk to someone who you probably have to work with and you don't have much in common with. So at least you have 15 minutes laughing about each other's personality traits. And it's an independent arbiter has decided that you have those personality traits. It's not someone saying, oh, no, you're like this. It's, hey, I did a test and this is what it says. It's like, so,
and if you've
everyone in on.
Yeah, and if you've done it through a HR area, there's usually a flashy report with pie charts and all that sort of thing that comes along with it that just makes you know.
And everyone's the greatest person as well. Like when you do those, no matter what your personality types, you're never an asshole.
Yeah, exactly right. There's an explanation for everything. All right, Steve, we might wrap it up there. So don't forget our website, SciTechCulture.com. You can get all of our links and content there. You can subscribe to all of our channels and feeds, Vimeo, YouTube, RSS, etc. And we hope you enjoy the website and greatly appreciate your visits. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.